Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the Ingrove in Phoenix, Arizona. Today I'm going to do a review of the new Mobile Fidelity One Step of Michael Jackson's album Off the Wall. I'm going to compare this to a US first pressing. I've got other copies of this record in my collection, but I think this is kind of the best comparison to do because this is the copy I think almost everybody has access to. If you have this record in your collection, chances are you probably have this. And for good reason. It's an excellent sounding recording. This is, I think, the pinnacle of all of Michael Jackson's recordings as far as sound quality goes. This has the most organic sound of any Michael Jackson record. By Thriller, while still being good, kind of had, it had more of a Phil Spector kind of vibe going on. There was a lot going on. Quincy was doing quite a bit with that record, and I think the sound quality kind of suffered. Where when it came to Off the Wall, this was kind of just a 70s funky R&B album, a little bit in the more traditional sense. Okay, so I listened to quite a bit and of these, these two albums back to back. I spent pretty much the better part of a day listening to this album. And what struck me is it's quite a bit different than the comparison of the US first pressing of Thriller and the Mobile Fidelity One Step. First of all, the Mobile Fidelity One Step of Thriller is cut at 33 RPM. This is a 45 RPM cut. But what I noticed about the 33 of Thriller, and I reviewed it at the time when it came out, is that had like a drastically different sound to it. That particular record, I don't want to say it sounded like a new recording, but it sounded like the closest thing to a new recording you could get without being a new recording, in the sense that the original vibe of the record as kind of a dancey, compressed, disco club, bar, club dance, floor filler type of record kind of was gone, and there was a lot more detail. You could hear what was going on in the mix, but it completely changed the vibe of the record. So it was quite different. And at the time, I preferred the One Step of Thriller, and I still do. I'm not dancing. I mean, sometimes I dance by myself in the living room, but for the most part, I'm just hanging out in the room, listening to the music. And when I listen to that Thriller One Step, I'm just immersed in what's going on. All the different stuff that was going on in that album that was unburied by the Mobile Fidelity mastering team, and I just loved it. Now, this particular record is different in the sense that it's very similar to the original US pressing. The vibe of the record is quite similar, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know if that was done intentionally or not, because I remember the blowback that Mobile Fidelity got at the time when Thriller came out. While I loved it, a lot of people were like, it doesn't sound like Thriller anymore. I need lots of compression, and I want to hear less of what's going on in the record. It needs to sound more like this, which I've always found like a perplexing argument. It's like, guys, that's the best-selling record on vinyl in the world of all time. It is not very difficult to find. And if you find the original so absolutely fantastic, you're in luck, because you can easily find a copy. Now, granted, it's still a very popular record, and nowadays a clean copy is like probably $20 to $40, but they're not difficult to find. It's not like the mythical A2B2 Dark Side of the Moon Blue Triangle where you got to pony up thousands of dollars for a minty copy, and you might wait a long time to find one. They're very readily available. So I never understood that. I want it to sound like the original. Well, then don't go buy the damn original. Why do you need the reissue? But with this record, and again, I don't know if it's because of those comments, it sounds very similar. So the vibe is the same. That could also be because there's not as much going on in this record as Thriller. There's not just the layering and layering and layering of stuff going on Off the Wall that you find on Thriller. Let me show you guys this particular record. Now, another thing is, this is limited to 6,000 copies, where Thriller was limited to 50,000 copies. I thought this was low. in hindsight, Thriller was kind of high, but I find this 6,000 copies, this is Michael Jackson. I'm guessing they're looking for a sellout here. They're looking to get back to the fact that they're going to manufacture something that probably isn't going to stick around long. I will say this. This is pressed at Fidelity, the new Mobile Fidelity pressing plant. The stuff that's been coming out of Fidelity lately is unbelievably good. I'm talking whisper quiet vinyl. Not the super vinyl, which this is pressed on, but I'm talking just your normal Mobile Fidelity pressed vinyl. Extremely quiet. But one of the things I will say over time I like about Mobile Fidelity is they're not afraid to change things. I'm lost count of the different iterations of a one-step as far as the changes along the lines. From the material on the box, the material on the jackets, to the actual, the jackets now are no longer that flat. They're more of like a soft touch, but a soft touch that doesn't grease up like the original ones. Not prone to fingerprinting. To the box being slimmed down, all the foam gone, which is a nice plus. And also now we're getting into the point of packaging differences. Gone are the days of these things being beat up by UPS or the post office and arriving with seam splits. Mobile Fidelity actually packs these now in a way that they actually put the record on top of the jacket and stuff it in there. So they don't even arrive with seam splits. So it's kind of nice. Pressed on the same VR900 compound. This actually might be called something different. This is a newer compound. It is still translucent, but it is like a cloudy, milky blue. And I remember talking to Don at RTI about this at Expona a year ago. And they're on a newer variant of this VR900. So let's get back to the sound quality of the record. So, like I said, the vibe is the same, right? But the biggest difference is it's similar in a sense. So you've got all the punch and drive like you'll find on the original. You don't have the compression, but being that it's cut at 45 RPM, it's cut much louder. But not all the tracks. I noticed, which I thought was a little weird, is Don't Stop Till You Got Enough. I felt was like, it's a louder cut on the original, and then some of the record of the original pressing kind of gets softer. So going back and forth between the Mobile Fidelity and the original, I noticed there was different volume changes, and I feel like that probably came from Mobile Fidelity more or less probably cutting this record with minimal to no compression versus the original. So there was a lot more dynamic range. There was more anomalies when I went back and forth to the two of them than I noticed with Thriller. But the album itself, as far as the sound quality goes, again, all the punch, all the drive on the Mobile Fidelity one step, but significantly better resolution. The bass on this was I was a fan of it. I don't know if a lot of people are going to like it because it is very present, which I mean, for an R&B record, shouldn't it be like, isn't kind of a thump? It should have a little bit of a thump. I mean, that gets you grooving. I mean, if I knew how to groove, but I don't. But I'm assuming if you were grooving, the bass would be good to have. But it just hits you like thwack. And all those kick drum sounds and all those bass sounds on the original pressing, it kind of mushes together. There's a lot of bass on it, but it's kind of a bloated and warbly bass. It is nowhere near as tight and controlled as the Mobile Fidelity. That Mobile Fidelity one step, when you hear like a pluck of a bass string, it's like bang, and then it just abruptly stops. It doesn't have, I don't want to say decay, because decay almost makes it sound like should be there. I kind of feel with the Mobile Fidelity, it kind of has like a very pluck, then stop. Almost like if you were to if you're playing a bass, if you were to play a string and palm mute, that kind of is the vibe you're going for. And I kind of feel like the Mobile Fidelity one step has that. It has a very, very, very tight bottom end. And I mean, I like a big tight bottom end as opposed to a warbly, blubbery bottom end. I mean, that's just my particular preference. I mean, some people might not like that. You know, get off on a side tangent. I had a guy in the hi-fi room the other day, and normally, you know, I got a pair of Focal Utopias in there, beautiful name set up, Kuzma 4-point tone arm, Stabby R turntable, beautiful, close to a $200,000 system. And normally I bring people in there and I'll play them something and their just mind is blown. So I had a guy come in and I played him a UHQR of Steely Dan Asia. And he's like, I don't like the way this sounds at all. I don't, that's too much top end. And he was just giving me the litany of everything he didn't like. And I'm like, I was kind of at a loss for words. I'm like, I've never had anybody like this. Most people are like, can I pull a cot up in here and just live in this room? But this guy was not a fan. I said, well, let me play you something else. And then I just pulled up my cell phone and I took the Steely Dan Asia that was on Apple Music and I streamed it. And he goes, yeah, this is more like it. And the moral of this story is different strokes for different folks. But I kind of like that lower bottom end that's on the Mobile Fidelity one step. But like the Thriller, you've got all of that upper end detail. You can hear the layering. Now, granted, not as much as Thriller because there's not as much going on as Thriller, but you can hear the layering and you can hear the effects of the album and the different music coming in and bobbing and weaving like the strings on Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. I mean, it's so clean and present on the soundstage. I will say, though, the original is a fantastic sounding record. It really is. It always has been. It's always been a great record. You know, I talked to the old timers in the hi-fi business that were doing this in the 70s and the 80s, and that was a demo disc for them. It sounds fantastic. But this one step really brings it to the next level. I am not a huge fan anymore. I mean, unless it's really good. I'm not nuts about 45 RPMs that cost 125 to 150 bucks. I really, if I can avoid them, I will. But this really sounds fantastic. This is a good sounding record. And I think what Mobile Fidelity has done with Michael Jackson's catalog thus far, and I don't think there's really much place to go from this. Bad is a pretty notoriously crummy sounding record. Maybe it's digitally recorded. Maybe something can be done with that. Probably not. It's probably not going to ever sound great. But I really dug what they have done to the Michael Jackson catalog thus far with Off the Wall and Thriller. It is really benefited from their particular take on manufacturing records. And I don't know if that's a combination of the way Krieg masters or the way they're able to tweak things endlessly in the DSD domain with the fact that these things are now captured at DSD at Sony, brought back to Mobile Fidelity and Sebastopol, and then tweaked. But it seems like Thriller, Off the Wall, has really benefited from it. And you know what? Another one of my favorite titles of theirs was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? You know, maybe they just got a knack for these R&B albums. But this is a fantastic sounding record. And if you had a complaint about Thriller being too different, I think you'll be happy with this in the sense that it is not overly different, but still really good and noticeably better. I mean, you can really hear deeper into the music, and being cut at 45, again, it slaps. This is a great sounding record. I'm really impressed by this. You know, I can recommend this, and I'm trying again my best not to recommend too many $125 to $150 records. But when it's warranted, it's warranted. You know, there are some of these one-steps, some of these UHQRs that are just that Steely Dan UHQR. You're never going to find a better sounding version of that going back on vinyl. I don't know what'll come up in the future. But as of now, that record is unbelievably good. And it's cut at 45. So if you gotta, you gotta. But when it gets close, you know, I would be a little bit more on the fence. And I tell you guys that. But this is just, when you guys start getting this, I'm sure a lot of you guys will get this. I'm just curious of your guys' opinion on this. I knew this was good when I first listened to it. When I was sent this copy, Mobile Fidelity, I actually called and asked for this. Very seldom, Lou, I get records for free, but I called Mobile Fidelity and I said, hey, can you send me one of these? I'd like to kind of listen to this because I just had so much fun with Thriller. I was kind of thinking to myself, I wonder what they're going to be able to do with Off the Wall. And I wanted to get a heads up on it because, Mobile Fidelity, although they're pretty good, they typically send retail stores their records about a week after the fact to 2 weeks after the fact, which isn't bad. Some audiophile labels are longer, but Mobile Fidelity is pretty good. But I wanted to get a jump on this. People were already asking me, what do you think? How's it going to be? And I got to answer them. Well, I have no idea. I haven't listened to the damn thing yet. But with this, I made the effort to contact them and say, hey, send me one of these things. I'm really curious of what the hell it's going to sound like. But super impressed. Big fan of this record. I've played it quite a bit at the store too. And that's always a good sign. A lot of times when I get records, even if they sound good, I'll play them once or twice. People were coming in too and they're like, oh, wow, this sounds really good, Mike. What do you think? And I'm like, I haven't compared it to anything yet, so I'm really leery about saying anything, but it sounds pretty damn good. And I think people were in agreement. It's a good sounding record and limited to 6,000. 44,000 less copies than Thriller. That's nuts because this is not that less significant and less good of an album compared to Thriller. This is a fantastic record musically. I wouldn't wait on it too long. Thriller, I still have. You can buy Thriller at theingroove.com. This, I have them as of now. But with 6,000, I don't know. Maybe they go back, though, and they do this at 33 RPM. But much like Santana Braxis, and I'll talk to it about that a little bit later in a future video, just because they do something at 33 that was great at 45 doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an absolute slam dunk. There is a benefit to the 45 RPM format, like the Big Bottom Men. All right, guys, check us out online at theingroove.com. Until next time.